Hey everyone, welcome to Commander Class episode 106, and this is the last one of 2024. When it comes to this, I'll be going over Affinity, pretty much explain what it is, giving variations of it, and dumbing it down for people that don't fully understand all the big word humbo jumbo stuff. So if you're interested in Affinity and what it can do for you, please watch the rest of this episode. But before I go any further, a word from our sponsors, and the sponsors is me and my small little Etsy shop. I make t-shirts and hoodies in multiple colours and sizes with designs I made that I thought would be good for people to enjoy. When it comes to it, all the proceeds go to helping the channel, so if you're interested in me and what I do, please go buy yourself something nice and help out the channel. Plus, if you would like, it also helps to like and subscribe and show other people. If you know any other Magic the Gathering fans that need to learn new abilities or keywords, I have an entire playlist helping people out. So please internet, please explain the long and boring version of Affinity.
This ability is written Affinity 4, Quality. A card with Affinity costs 1 generic mana less to cast for each permanent with that quality under the caster's control. For instance, a Frogmite, which is an artifact creature that costs 4 generic mana and has affinity for artifacts, would be free if the player casting it controls 4 or more artifacts, whereas Thoughtcast, a sorcery with a printed cost of 4 generic mana and 1 blue mana, will cost a single blue mana regardless of whether its caster controls 4 or 5, or more, artifacts. Affinity appeared throughout the Mirrodam block, usually for artifacts. A cycle of 5 cards in Darksteel had affinity for each of the basic land types.
But in layman's terms, it is if a card says it has an affinity for something, depending on how many of those things you have, it costs that much less. So if, for example, if you have I'm going to overexceed it, a 10 blue card that has affinity for artifacts, and you've got 10 artifacts. Can you do simple maths? It costs a blue. That's how easy it is. There's many different variations of these cards. Some say like lands or enchantments or anything like that, but majority of them, in my opinion, or from top of my head, is artifacts, or the easiest ones to play is artifacts. I do think it works for tokens as well, and I do think this is a good and fine ability. There is 2 versions of this. I call it the older version and the newer version. The newer version says affinity for X, depending on what X is or how many of you have of X, costs less of that card. But then there's kind of the older version or different variation of it where it'll go and say it in a long version of the way, or it'll say this card costs 1 less for each gate you control or each artifact you control. So it's just pretty much just written out instead of just shorting it down to affinity for X. When it comes to this, there is a fair few commanders that have affinity for X, and I do think some of them are quite playable, and affinity is a very powerful thing, so having it on your commander is good. So if you've never seen any of the commanders with affinity, here are some on screen.
Chiscoria, Forged Tyrant. Nahiri, Forged in Fury. Urza, Chief Artificer. Tomek, Wielder of Law. Imskir Iron Eater. The Dalek Emperor.
Now I've gone over the affinity cards, I do have to say I do find affinity to be very, very good. And the one thing I like about affinity is it is a very powerful ability that's not overused. There is not that many affinity cards, and some are meh, but even the good ones, there is so limited that you have to put thought into putting in your deck or not. To be honest, affinity is one of those things that if it was overpowered and had many cards, it would be in every single deck. I do think affinity is one of the most, or a very powerful ability or keyword, but in my opinion, I do like that it is in very limited qualities. That's the type of card I like when it comes to Magic. Usually when there's a new ability, they put it on everything, and there's too much, there's too variation, and then it becomes rubbish. This is a good ability that you need to think when you are building that deck. Is this card worth putting in? Is there enough of these cards that make me cost nothing? If I draw it early, am I able to pay it for only like 2 or 3 less mana and it still be worth it? These are the cards you have to put a lot of thought in, and they rather make or break powerful decks. But as always, when it comes to these commander classes, I'm thankful that you're here, and If you like this one, there is last week's class here, a playlist of all the commander classes I do here, and a subscribe one here, and I will see you all in the next video.